Well, as always, here's our story recap video for this week. Sit back, enjoy, and at the end, there's going to be some questions as always, just to make you think a little bit more about this week's story. So, enjoy. Hi, I've got a great story for you today. Now, if you remember from last week, our theme for this term is God's great family. And this week, we're going to be looking at a story about a family that shows that actually sometimes our families here on earth might have different problems and different struggles, but actually what's amazing is that when we put our trust in God, we become part of His family, and His family is amazing and incredible because He loves us so much. But for this week's story, I need you to help me to tell the story. Now, I know you're obviously not here with me, but you can still help me tell the story, because our story today is about a guy called Joseph. And as we go through the story, you're going to see that Joseph gets into lots and lots of trouble. But actually, throughout it all, God had a plan behind it. God loved Joseph and was doing something amazing in his life. So in the story, whenever I say everything seemed to be going wrong for Joseph, but I need you to say, God had a plan. So should we have a bit of a practice? So here we go. Everything seemed to be going wrong for Joseph, but God had a plan. So whenever you hear that, make sure you say that nice and loud wherever you're watching this story. So let me tell you a little bit about Joseph. Now, if they were going to do a painting of Joseph's family, it would have been a bit hard to fit everybody in because Joseph had lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of brothers. In fact, Joseph was one of 12 brothers. I wonder, as I paint all of these up by here, I wonder, can any of you take a guess which one do you think might be Joseph? Hopefully you managed to work it out. Joseph is the one with the nice, bright, colourful coat on the end. Because you see, Joseph's dad loved Joseph more than any of his other brothers. Joseph's dad thought that Joseph was really this by here. Joseph's dad thought he was really special. And so he gave him a coat of many bright, wonderful colours. So whereas all of his other brothers would just have had boring, ordinary clothes, Joseph had an amazing and incredible coat of lots of different colours. Now that might not seem very fair, does it? That actually Joseph's dad loved him more than any of his other brothers. And you know, perhaps you feel like that sometimes as well. Perhaps you feel that actually someone gets more attention than you, perhaps in school or something like that, and you don't think it's fair that they're getting more attention than you are, that someone seems to think that they're more special than you are. Well, I want to tell you that it's tough when that happens, isn't it? But there's actually someone who loves each and every one of us just the same. Someone who made us all and loves us all and wants us all to come to know Him. And that person is actually, you might have been able to guess, this person by here. God loves each and every single one of us just the same. He thinks that we're all special. And actually, He wants us to turn and put our trust in Him because He has an amazing plan for our lives. Well, as you can imagine, with Joseph's dad treating him like this, it made Joseph's brothers really jealous. But there was something else that made Joseph's brothers really jealous as well. You see, God had given Joseph a very special ability. You see, God was actually telling Joseph what dreams meant. So when people had dreams, Joseph could speak to God and God would tell him what those dreams meant. And so one morning when everyone else was sat downstairs having breakfast around the table, Joseph rushed down the stairs as quick as he could. He said, "Hey guys, you're not going to believe the dream I had last night. I had this amazing and incredible dream, and it means that one day all of you are going to bow down before me." "What?" said his brothers. "We're going to bow down before you? Who do you think you are?" Joseph's brothers were getting more and more jealous all the time. Well, one day, when Joseph's brothers were out in the field doing some work, Joseph's dad asked him to go and take them some food. And as they saw him coming, one of the brothers turned around and said, "Oh, look, it's him, our brother Joseph. Oh, thinks he's all high and mighty, thinks he's amazing, doesn't he? Oh, Joe, I wish we could just get rid of him." Can you believe that? Joseph's brothers, his own family, were actually talking about killing Joseph. Well, Joseph's oldest brother, Reuben, he wasn't too happy with that. And he said, look, guys, let's not do that. I've got one of these by here. Reuben said to the others, I've got a plan. You see, Reuben wasn't happy about killing off Joseph. That wouldn't be a good thing to do at all, would it? And so Reuben turned to them and he said, hey, look, instead of, getting rid of Joseph, why don't we just beat him up a bit, show him who's boss, and then throw him down into that big pit over there, and we can leave him there. And Reuben actually planned to come back and get Joseph a bit later. So that's just what happened. Joseph came there, they ripped off his coat of many colours, they beat him up a bit, and they threw him down into the pit, where there was no way that Joseph could get out by himself. Everything seemed to be going wrong for Joseph, but God had a plan. And it might seem like a bit of a strange plan at this point, because just at that moment, along came some travellers on some camels heading off towards the distant country of Egypt. They were actually going there to sell some slaves to rich and important people in Egypt. And one of Joseph's brothers said, hey, instead of just putting him down in that pit, we can make a bit of money out of this. Why don't we get him back up out of that pit and actually sell him to those slave traders? Can you believe it? Joseph's brothers, his own family, were actually going to get rid of him. And that's just what they did. They pulled him out of the pit. And their own brother, they actually sold to become a slave over in Egypt. Joseph was tied up, attached to the back of the people that were going, and he was led off towards Egypt, where he was going to become a slave. Everything seemed to be going wrong for Joseph, but God had a plan. God knew just what he was doing. Well, Joseph's brothers, they grabbed hold of his coat, they put a bit of goat's blood on it, and they took it back to his dad, and they said, Dad, we don't know what's happened. We don't know what's gone on, but Joseph must have been killed. Joseph's dad was really, really sad. And I can't imagine how Joseph's brothers felt, whether they started to feel a bit guilty because they realised just how bad a thing they'd done. And actually, when we do things that are wrong, it causes a great big problem, because actually all those things we do that are wrong, or think that are wrong, or say that are wrong, form a great big barrier that stops us from getting to know God, the one who loves and cares for us more than anybody else. Well, what was going to happen to Joseph? Well, Joseph got to Egypt and he was sold as a slave. He was sold to a man called Potiphar. But you see, God was with Joseph because Joseph trusted God. Joseph knew that no matter what was going on, no matter what seemed to be happening, God was with him. And so Joseph knew that God would keep him safe. And so actually, Joseph just worked hard in Potiphar's house. And actually, Potiphar realized how good a worker Joseph was. And he gave him more and more responsibilities. Joseph was doing great. He was having a great time in Potiphar's house. But Joseph had a bit of a problem. You see, Potiphar had a wife. And Potiphar's wife thought that Joseph was really, really handsome. And whenever there was no one else around, she kept coming up to Joseph and saying, "Come on, Joseph, please, just give me a kiss. Just give me a little kiss, Joseph. No one will ever know." But Joseph knew that it was wrong. Joseph knew that she was married to Potiphar, and so it was the wrong thing to do. But one day, it ended up that there was no one else in the house at all, just Joseph and Potiphar's wife. She got him cornered in the corner of a room and she was saying to him, "Come on, Joseph, please, please, Joseph, give me a kiss, Joseph. No one will ever know that you're going to give me a kiss. Come on, please, please, please." And Joseph started to feel a bit tempted. He knew that it was the wrong thing to do. He knew he shouldn't do it, but he was starting to think about doing it. And then he thought, no, I shouldn't do it. I know that it's wrong. I know that God won't like it. I know I'll get into trouble. I'm not going to do it. But he didn't know what to do. How was he going to get out of this mess that he was in? Well, suddenly Joseph thought, the only thing I can do is to run as fast as I can out of this situation, and then I'll make sure I won't do anything that's wrong. And so that's just what Joseph did. He ran away as quick as he possibly could. And when we feel tempted to do something that's wrong, it's good for us to follow Joseph's advice and do what Joseph did. If we think we're in a situation where we're going to end up doing something that's wrong, the best thing to do is to run out of there as quick as we possibly can to make sure that we don't do that thing that's wrong. Because we said, didn't we, that when we do things that are wrong, it forms this great big barrier that, divides us from God, that separates us from him and his love and stops us from being part of his family. But you know, God loves us so much, he's done something to sort things out. But I'll tell you about that in a bit. Well, as Joseph ran past Potiphar's wife and out of the house, she grabbed hold of his cloak and pulled it off. Joseph didn't think anything about it, but actually it was going to be a great big deal. Because you see, Potiphar's wife was so angry that Joseph wouldn't kiss her, she decided to tell lies to get Joseph into trouble. In fact, she told such bad lies about Joseph that Joseph ended up getting in lots and lots of trouble. She told her husband, Potiphar, that Joseph had been the one trying to kiss her and she'd had to fight him off, and as she'd fought him off, she'd got hold of his cloak. And then he'd run away. Well, Potiphar believed his wife, and so Joseph got into so much trouble, he was actually put into prison. Joseph was stuck in prison. He didn't know how on earth he was ever going to get out. Everything seemed to be going wrong for Joseph, but God had a plan. And God's plan was actually to send some people into the prison to be with Joseph, who were going to ultimately help him out. God sent into the prison a butler and a baker, and Joseph started to get to know them. And then one day, both of them had some strange dreams. And Joseph said, well, actually, God sometimes helps me to understand what dreams mean. So he found out what the dreams were, and he spoke to God, and God told him what it meant. And he said to the butler, Butler, in a couple of days, your dream means that actually in 3 days' time, you're going to be released from the prison. And you're going to get to go back to your old job being a butler for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt himself. Oh, wow, thought the butler, that's amazing, that's incredible. Oh, I hope that comes true. But Joseph then had to turn to the baker and say, I'm sorry, but God has told me that your dream means that in 3 days, you're going to be killed. Well, 3 days passed, and everything turned out just how God had told Joseph it would. The baker was killed, but the butler got to return to his old job as a butler for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt himself. Wow. Now the butler knew that Joseph was innocent, and he was really pleased that Joseph had been able to help him in the prison. So he said, Joseph, I won't forget about you. I'll tell Pharaoh about you. I'll tell him how you shouldn't be in prison, and I'll make sure you get out. Oh, Joseph was so excited. He thought, oh, just a couple of days now, and I'm going to get out of prison. Everything's going to be okay again. Everything's going to be fine. But the butler forgot all about Joseph. And Joseph was still, well, stuck in the prison with no way to get out. Again, everything seemed to be going wrong for Joseph, but God had a plan. And God's plan was actually he gave some dreams to Pharaoh. Really strange dreams. But Pharaoh called together all of his chief advisors and all of the most intelligent people in his entire country. But, well, no one could tell him what these dreams meant. And then the butler thought, oh, what about Joseph in the prison? God helps Joseph to know what dreams mean. Maybe Joseph can help. So he told Pharaoh, and Pharaoh called for Joseph to be brought out of the prison. And Joseph came before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, Joseph, I understand that your God helps you to understand what dreams mean. Well, yes, said Joseph, sometimes he does. Well, tell me then. Joseph, well, you tell me the dream. I'll speak to God, and I'll see what God says. And you know, Pharaoh's dream was a rather strange dream. In his dream, he saw 7 fat cows, and these 7 fat cows were eaten by 7 skinny cows. That's a really strange dream, isn't it? That's not the kind of dream I normally have, but that was his dream. Well, Joseph went away, and he spoke to God, and he said, God, can you help me out, God? What does this dream mean? And God told Joseph what it meant. So Joseph went back before Pharaoh, and he said, Pharaoh, God has told me that what your dream means is that for the next 7 years, we're going to grow lots and lots of crops. There's going to be lots and lots of food for everybody to eat. But then for 7 years after that, there's going to be no food grown in your land at all. That in these next 7 years, we need to save up as much food as we can so that nobody goes hungry in the 7 years afterwards. Wow, thought Pharaoh, I've called together all of the people I think are the best and most intelligent in my country, and no one could tell me what it meant. But your God, Joseph, has told you just what my dream means. I am so pleased with you, Joseph, that in fact, I am going to make you the most powerful person in all of Egypt except for me. Joseph was going to become Pharaoh's second in command. From being stuck in the prison, not knowing what was going to happen, Joseph was now released and was now going to be able to do this by here. He was going to be able to serve God in Pharaoh's palace itself. Can you imagine that? When he got thrown into the pit and sold into slavery, who would have thought that he was going to end up serving as the second in command in all of Egypt? It seems incredible, doesn't it? But throughout it all, God had had a plan. Well, for the next 7 years, Joseph kept a careful check on all the food, and he stored up food in lots and lots of really huge big barns, so there would be lots of food for everyone to eat. And you know, it wasn't just in Egypt that there was no food. It was in the neighboring countries as well. And so actually, when people heard that Joseph had stored up this food in Egypt, people started to come from the neighboring lands with great huge wagons asking Joseph if there was any way that they could have some food. And because Joseph had done such a great job listening to God and doing what God told him to do, there was lots of food for everybody. So Joseph would give some to some of the people that came from the neighboring lands as well. But you know, one day Joseph was really shocked because the people who came from a neighboring land were actually, well, his brothers. But they didn't realize that it was Joseph because, well, they weren't expecting him to be the second in command of all of Egypt. The first time Joseph just sort of let them go. But the second time they came back, Joseph sent everybody out of the room apart from his brothers, and he said, "Hey guys, it's me, your brother Joseph. How is our dad?" Joseph's brothers were really, really scared. Their knees probably started to knock together. They were so afraid because the last time they'd seen Joseph, they'd thrown him in a pit and sold him into slavery. Now he was one of the most important people in all of Egypt. What was Joseph going to do to them? Joseph realized what they were thinking, and he said, "Brothers, don't be afraid. You meant these things for bad. You meant these things to go wrong, but actually God did it. God had a plan behind it all. God made me come here to Egypt so that actually everyone in Egypt and all of you, my family, could be, well, saved. You meant wrong things to happen, but God had a plan in it all, and God turned it around for good so that everyone could be saved." And you know, actually, God had an amazing plan as well to save us, to sort out the problem of the things that we've done that are wrong. That actually God himself came down here, down from heaven, down to earth. And actually people meant bad things for him, that people actually took God himself, Jesus, and they put him on a cross to try and kill him. But actually, even though they meant bad things to happen, just like with Joseph, God turned it round for good, and he did it so that everyone who turns and puts their trust in him could be saved. You see, what God says is all of those things we've done that are wrong can be sorted out, can be taken away, can be forgiven if we're just willing to turn, say we're sorry to him, and put our trust in him. You see, Joseph thought that everything seemed to keep going wrong, but he trusted God throughout because he knew that God had a plan for him. And you know, the Bible says that God didn't just have a plan for Joseph, but the Bible says that God has a plan for you and for me. That if we're just willing to turn and put our trust in him, then actually we can become part of his family, the most amazing and incredible family ever, God's great family. And actually, when we listen to God, just like Joseph did, we can hear the plan that he has for us and the amazing and incredible things he wants us to do. Because you see, God thinks that all of us are really special, and he wants us to serve him here on earth and do incredible things for him. And he promises that we'll be able to do that if we put our trust in him to be saved, to become part of his family, and one day to get to be with him forever. Well, that's the amazing story about Joseph. But hopefully you realize in there as well that God doesn't just have a plan for people like Joseph, but God has a plan for you as well, if you're willing to put your trust in him. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story just as much as you did the first time, if not even more. So there's a couple of questions just to make you think a little bit more about the story. So at the beginning of the story, we saw that Joseph's dad thought that he was really special and gave him the special coat, and because he could interpret dreams as well, his brothers became really, really jealous. And I just want to ask you, how does it make you feel when someone is treated as being special more than you. And actually, can you remember who is that person who loves each and every one of us just the same? And the second one then is, remember when Joseph was in Potiphar's house, Potiphar's wife kept trying to kiss him and he felt really tempted to do something that was wrong, but he did something to sort it out, didn't he? Can you remember what did Joseph do to make sure that he didn't do anything wrong? And it's a good thing as well for us to remember, isn't it? To make sure that if we're ever tempted, to follow what Joseph did and just make sure we don't do anything wrong. And lastly then, as we saw throughout, everything seemed to be going wrong for Joseph, but God had a plan. And I said, didn't I, that God has a plan for our lives, but what do we have to do? Jesus died on the cross, but what do we have to do to become part of God's great family and know God's amazing plan for our lives? Well, those are the questions just to make you think a little bit more. If you're unsure about any of those, message us. We would love to help you. With anything else, always message us. We would love to talk to you and find out how much you're enjoying Big Fish and that kind of thing. But I hope you enjoyed our story recap this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye.